Summer is in full swing and we are counting down the days until Season 7 ends, but not before I bring you a fancy new episode. I'm your host, Garrett K. Jones, and this is The Right Way. Hey, welcome back to The Right Way, where we talk book recommendations, author interviews, and creative writing tips. Now, if you haven't done so already, please make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, and click the bell for notifications on new videos. I've got great content for you, but I want to share some important information first. First up, next week is my July live stream and writing workshop. Like usual, I will be holding this at the Hanford branch of the Kings County Library, and everything will kick off at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Just like with all the other writing workshops, if you're local to the area, the event will be free, so come on down and join us in person. But if you aren't able to join in person, there will be the live stream on YouTube. The topic for this writing workshop will be on how to pick a genre to write and how to go about working with or creating writing prompts to get your creative juices flowing. Now, there is a caveat. I will let you guys know that this is going to be the last writing workshop on site at the library for now. The library is going to be packing up at the end of July and moving to a temporary location off-site, as the building itself is going to be getting a massive renovation inside and I think possibly outside. This is really exciting because they've been waiting for this grant money for a long time, and they finally get to have the opportunity to really improve the infrastructure of a wonderful facility. I'm not sure if there's going to be any events at the temporary site, but as soon as I know, you guys will know. Second up, as I mentioned last month, I have an event coming up in August, namely the Heart of the Valley Book Fair in Madera, California. Myself and several other authors will be present at this event, which will be hosted by the Friends of the Madera County Library on Saturday, August 23rd at the Madera United Methodist Church. The event runs from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., and if you're local to the area, check it out and come on by and see me at my table, where I'll be selling copies of all my books and some of the Book One commemorative candles. Lastly, in just a few weeks is the Season 7 finale. The last couple of years, I've opened the Writies Award category up for voting, and whomever got the most votes won the award for their specific category. This season, I'm doing things a little differently by using a random generator for the Best Interview Guest and Best Guest Host. The winners have already been selected, and I'll be announcing who they are during the finale episode. So the last few years, I've turned my attention towards recommending audiobooks, since that is how I get a lot of my own personal reading done.
Really? Audiobooks? That's not really reading. You're just listening.
Now, if you ever encounter someone who says audiobooks aren't really reading, you ignore that person because you don't need that kind of negativity in your life. Now, while I know I did a list of some of these titles, way back when in January, I wanted to go more in depth with my selections. So here are my top 10 audiobooks for Season 7. Number 10, Star Wars Padawan's Pride by Brian Q. Miller, narrated by Kevin Kemp. The story goes back to the days before the Clone Wars and focuses on the early master-apprentice relationship between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. Anakin gets thrust back into the world of pod racing while he and Kenobi investigate the criminal underworld of the Hutt Lords. At number 9 is Tansy Bloom Monster Hunter by L.J. Weller, narrated by Tanya Reynolds. This was one of my selections from January. I really enjoyed this book because the characters are interesting and they go through a bit of a story arc. The world is real, and the author takes her time to really delve into the local legends and folklore surrounding this particular part of the UK, where the story is based. If you're a fan of Supernatural, then I think you're going to really like this book. At number 8, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving, narrated by Tom Misson. I've been a fan of this story ever since I was a kid, but my only exposure to the story of the Headless Horseman and Ichabod Crane were from the Disney animated adaptation and the Sleepy Hollow film directed by Tim Burton. I did watch the Sleepy Hollow series on the Fox network, so when I saw that Tom Misson, who played Ichabod Crane on that TV series, was narrating, I jumped at the chance to finally read the original story. It is definitely worth listening to, especially at Halloween time. Number 7, Constituent Service by John Scalzi, narrated by Amber Benson. I'm a fan of Scalzi's work. It's thought-provoking and frequently hilarious. The short Audible original is no different. It takes place in a world where humans and beings from across the galaxy inhabit Earth, often working alongside each other, and in this particular case, a young college graduate goes to work for a large city's district office and has to navigate the finer points of interspecies political bureaucracy. Number 6 is horror classics Frankenstein, Dracula, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, a great courses lecture series written and narrated by James Krasner. This lecture focuses on the stories and how they developed, as well as dealing into the social elements that prompted the authors to develop the narratives of their books. It also delves into some of the psychology and folklore underpinning the texts. So it's really, really insightful. Number 5 is another great courses lecture series called Medieval Myths and Mysteries, written and narrated by Dorsey Armstrong. These lectures were incredibly fun for me to listen to because they delved into some of the biggest topics of the medieval world, from chivalric knights to the Knights Templar to Robin Hood to King Arthur and Camelot. Again, really insightful, and learning that kind of history can provide a fun resource for anyone writing fantasy today. Recommendation number 4 is The Commuter by James Patterson and Aaron Tracy, and narrated by a full cast of actors including Lizzie Kaplan, Richard Schiff, and Thomas Lennon. The story focuses on a blackballed former FBI agent who stumbles upon a potential murder mystery with a culprit who hits way too close to home. I'm not usually a fan of James Patterson, but this one really intrigued me and I had to give it a listen. Number 3 is Firefly Coup de Grâce by Una McCormack and narrated by Emily Lawrence and James Anderson Foster. People who know me know I love me some Firefly. I mean, clearly. This story feels like a really cool adaptation of True Grit brought into the verse, and instead of John Wayne or Jeff Bridges working to help a young girl get revenge on the man who killed her pa, it's Captain Malcolm Reynolds and the crew of the Serenity stepping in to help. In the penultimate spot, I have Batman Resurrection by John Jackson Miller, narrated by Will Dameron. This title drops us right back into the world of the 1989 Batman film. While I grew up with the television Adam West version, the version brought to the big screen by director Tim Burton was a definitive version for me growing up. I got so into that movie that I could pretty much recite whole lines of dialogue verbatim without missing a beat. And while Batman Returns wasn't as strong of an entry, it was still a great movie. This book is set in between those two movies and shares some of the repercussions that came in the aftermath of the Joker's attack on Gotham, as well as some of the new advancements that Batman works on that show up later on in Batman Returns. Miller has another book in this series coming out later this year, and I'm really eager to get my hands on a copy. So lastly, at number 1, we have Dragon Day by Bob Prohl, narrated by a full cast including Haley Atwell, Michael Chiklis, and Jimmy Simpson. The best way I can describe this book is that it is Reign of Fire meets World War Z. What I mean by this is that the narrative structure of the book is written in these journalist first-hand accounts of dragons erupting out of the ground in the modern day, 21st century. Atwell plays a reporter who is traveling across the globe with her daughter to piece together as much information about the dragons and where they originated as best as she can, while exploring how the rest of the world responds to such a tremendous event. So that's my list, and if you're interested in these recommendations, you'll find those titles and their ISBN numbers down in the video description. So I connected with this month's interviewee on Instagram.
You always do.
Okay, so sue me if I don't exactly enjoy spending time on Twitter.
Hey, it's called X now.
It's Twix then. Shut up, other me. Anyway, Brice Odom is the author of 4 books, and I hope you enjoy the conversation that I got to have with him. All right, Brice, thank you for agreeing to do the interview and being on the show. It is great to have you. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well for having me, Garrett.
Good. You're very welcome to be here. So tell me about what it is that you write. I'd like to know a little bit more about your work.
So I write fiction that a little bit of poetry as well, short stories, and have one novel out there right now. But I genre-wise, I'm a little eclectic, but I like to usually describe it as subject matter that includes the fantastic. So everything from world-building fantasy to magical realism, or even a hard-boiled detective story, a little all over the place, but there's usually some kind of sense of wonder in the fantastic in them.
So tell me about your most recent book. What is all that about?
So my most recent book that's gotten published was last November. It's right here. It's Letters from the Frontier. It's an epistolary novel that takes place in a fictional kingdom where something mysterious is threatening the kingdom. I won't tell you what because you got to read the book. But something mysterious is threatening the kingdom, and we're learning about it with all our characters as they encounter new things, as they write letters to loved ones, to superior officers, and things like that. And so the kingdom is mobilizing to defend against they don't know what at first. And then they, about halfway through the book, they figure out what it is, and then they have to respond.
So how'd you get into writing? Was this something that you've always wanted to do, or you're just sitting there in your class one day teaching, you're like, I think I want to write a book?
I cannot think of a time when I wasn't wanting to tell a story of some kind. I usually like to use the phrase, I'm just an older kid still telling stories. Because when I was real little, I wrote picture book stories about an adventurer. I still remember my granny using her typewriter to help me type up and publish a book. When I don't know if I was 10, maybe I was 10 years old at the time. So I have been doing this, just always wanting to tell a story.
What are some of your inspirations as a writer?
I'm a huge movie buff, so there's plenty, of that. My horrible detective story is really my love letter to the movie Chinatown and Maltese Falcon.
Nice.
So that's in my short story collection, Light of All Lights, and it is the oldest story that I have out there for people to read. That was the first story I wrote. This has gone to I've upped an ante. I've passed some kind of milestone in skill. So that was so films can be very inspirational there, but of course, when you're a writer, it's some of the big stuff is just, of course, authors. And I kind of always cite 3 as my biggest influence. Of course, Tolkien is my favorite writer, and I know I probably sound very cliche when I say that, but you read Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion. And I've actually read the Silmarillion more than I've read Lord of the Rings, which I know makes me an outlier with a lot of
That's impressive.
Middle Earth people. But sense of expansive imagination is just so amazing. And then the other two are more stylistic, and they're very 180 degrees different. One is Charles Williams, who was an Inkling as well. He was a latecomer. Tolkien and him had a very complicated relationship. He was really good friends with Lewis. And then the other guy is Michael Shera, which is way different. If any y'all, if you don't know who he is, or if any of the watchers out there don't know who he is the guy who wrote The Killer Angels, one of the great Civil War novels, and For Love of the Game. Yeah, but great baseball book. The book is way better than the movie. Kevin Costner was a really good Billy Chapel, but the book was way better.
So, what has been one of the biggest challenges or the hardest parts that you've encountered in developing your writing?
So, I'm a school teacher, and that is, if you know any school teachers, you know it's a very time-consuming job, and even in a light week, you still feel pretty dead mentally when you get home some days, and it's tough to keep a project going every day. If I'm in the middle of something I really am trying to get done, and I really like, a lot of times that means Saturday I'm going to be blocking off anywhere between 1 and 3 hours, just to force myself to keep working. Because if I don't, in a school year, it's so easy for just the days and weeks just to go and slip away.
Oh yeah.
But so time management's a huge issue. The other is the actual publishing process is always a challenge. I don't have a literary agent. It really feels like you're going blind to that, whether it's finding journals to publish stories or looking for literary agents. Now, I've been fortunate over the last year at this point. I've gotten 3 short stories accepted into different publications, so that's been a really exciting. And I've had a honorable mention in a writing contest. So, I'm starting to be able to find more places, but that is a real challenge when you don't have the time and you don't know what you're doing.
Brice, what advice would you give to other would-be authors who are watching this interview and wondering what they can do to improve what they're working on?
Every author has, the laundry list of things that they could say. But my biggest one is kind of twofold. One is just keep writing. It does, you get the people who say write every day, write something every day, and sometimes your life or your job just does not allow that. But intentionally keep coming back to it. Keep trying, pick at it. When all you can do is pick at it, pick at it. When you can sit down and write a good bit, sit down and write a good bit. When the inspiration strikes, write it down on a note card. Come back to it later. Yeah. But always just be trying to write. But the other key part of that is don't write what other people want. Write what you want to read.
Well, we're coming up on time, Brice. So we're going to wrap up with one last question. How can people connect with you, and how can they get a hold of copies of Letters from the Frontier?
Well, you can follow. I've got a website, jbriceodom.com. And then plus I'm on social media. Facebook is jbriceodom is the official page, and Instagram is at jbriceodom_author. And there is the YouTube channel I mentioned earlier, which is sporadically used, but is used on occasion. And that's jbriceodom_author as well.
Very cool. Well, awesome. Brice, thank you for being a part of the show. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Garrett. Thanks for having me on.
A big thank you to J. Brice Odom for being this month's Author Awareness interviewee. Now, if you'd like to connect with him and get copies of his work, you can find those links down in the video description. You can also catch the unedited version of this conversation through my support page over on Patreon. So this month I'm jumping back into providing some creative writing tips. While I've covered things from the hero's journey to world building and from character design to editing, there's one topic I have not covered, and that is theme. Now, personally, when I draft a story, I don't go into the writing process with anything other than, here's the plot and characters, let's get her done. I don't usually consider anything more than telling a well-crafted story meant to entertain. In fact, rarely do I ever consider the concept of theme in my stories, at least not until after the bulk of the writing is done and I'm going through the revision process. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't think themes are any less important. In fact, on the contrary, I believe they are incredibly important. They just don't happen to be my first thought when I jump into a writing project. So if you're not really sure what I'm talking about, here's a bit of a breakdown. A literary theme is the underlying message of or the central idea explored in a work of fiction. Many themes are often universal, focusing on broader truths accessible to just about anybody who reads it. These could be topics of good versus evil, love, friendship, and camaraderie, loss and grief, or victory and triumph in the face of adversity. These topics aren't just added to the story willy-nilly.
Nimbly-bimly from tree to tree.
They're layered in and threaded throughout the story to communicate the author's perspective on the matter and raises questions for the reader to ponder before the story comes to an end, and maybe those questions continue to ruminate inside your noggin long after you've finished reading it completely. So the theme gets conveyed through plot details, character development, the setting, symbolism, foreshadowing, and dialogue. Let me share an example from two of my favorite franchises, Star Wars and Harry Potter. In both franchises, Luke Skywalker and Harry Potter are both orphaned at birth and go to live with an aunt and uncle far away from the special world that the rest of the story takes place in. If you want to know more about special worlds, check out my playlist on the hero's journey right up here. Both Luke and Harry are told crafted narratives about what happened to their parents. While Luke only gets information about his father and nothing of his mother, Harry gets an earful from his aunt and uncle about his parents, and both accounts deal with death. Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru tell Luke that his father was a pilot on a spice freighter, and the information is corrected and kind of twisted by Obi-Wan Kenobi when he says his pupil Darth Vader betrayed and murdered Anakin Skywalker.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
In the wizarding world, the Dursleys tell Harry that his parents were good-for-nothings who got themselves killed in a car crash.
A car crash?
Which Hagrid challenges, and Petunia adds,
she went and got herself blown up.
So neither of these is really the full scope of what happened to Anakin Skywalker or Lily and James Potter. But what's interesting is that up until the end of Empire Strikes Back and the middle of Half-Blood Prince, both of our heroes believe their dads were especially good people. Anakin was a Jedi. James died protecting his family from Voldemort. But the truth is that neither man was a pure soul. We here in the future know Anakin Skywalker fell to the dark side and became Darth Vader, and we learn through a briefly mind-read memory that James Potter used to be a complete D-bag who bullied a young Severus Snape. And both Luke and Harry have to wrestle with their respective revelations because while it's never explicitly stated, one of the themes in both of these franchises is legacy. And it asks the question, how do you live up to the example, good or bad, set by your parents? Most kids grow up idolizing their parents. Me, personally, I remember looking up to my father and wanting to be like him. And as I grew older, I came to realize that my dad was not this infallible guy. He had his hang-ups because ultimately he's an imperfect human being. I still think that my dad can beat up your dad, but that's a topic for a very different video. So here are 7 tips for adding a literary theme to your story. So, tip number 1, seek universal themes. No, I'm going to have to talk with my video editor. This is where you focus on the part of the plot that is recurring with regards to people of all ages, races, genders, and walks of life. Tip number 2, choose a theme that sticks with your reader. Consider which ideas you want your readers to keep thinking about, even if they've forgotten the specific plot point of the book. Tip number 3, develop your story premise first, then see what theme best applies. You could even begin writing the story, like I or some other authors do, before you ever really develop your theme. Tip 4, create an outline. Drafting an outline and including your theme in the outlining process can help you find a consistent placement for the thematic elements that you want to include. Tip 5, weave the theme throughout the narrative. This piggybacks off of tip 4 by making sure your main character encounters situations that highlight the theme as you fill in the details of each act. If you're balancing multiple storylines, see what you can do to expose your characters to the theme in ways unique to them. Tip 6, include multiple themes. Many stories aren't rooted in just one theme. You might know the central idea of your story, but you might discover a different theme through the writing process that resonates within the boundaries of the narrative. And finally, tip 7, don't limit yourself. Take care not to limit your thinking to the way themes have been expressed in the past, such as other novels and stories. While you might get some pushback about the limited number of themes, every story is different, and how you apply the theme is going to be unique to your story. So there you go. Follow these steps and you'll find a great way to incorporate themes into your story. Happy writing. Hey, thanks for watching. If you haven't done so by this point in the video, please make sure to like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications on new videos just like this one. If you're interested in being a channel supporter, you can find links for Patreon and the merch store on Teespring, or if you'd like to make a one-time donation, you can find my link for Cash App. Make sure to tune in next week for the July live stream, and I'll see you then. I'm gonna get my drink on. Yeah!